Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to this episode of the Better Together Facebook Live. My name is Barb Bruce. I am your host, and here on the Better Together Facebook Live, this is where we talk about our hopes, our dreams, our worries, and even our COVID pandemic waistlines. Friends, it doesn't matter where you come from or what you've been through. Here on the Better Together Facebook Live is where we find the hope, the help, as well as the practical next steps so that we can all get better together. And this week on the Better Together Facebook Live, I am thrilled to talk with a friend of mine. Whenever we get in any kind of close proximity together, who knows what will happen. The last time she and I were on stage together, I heard the most extraordinary account of how she watched herself give birth to twins. So it's just, you're gonna just buckle up, Buttercup, tonight. But before I introduce tonight's guest, I wanna say hello for those of you who are joining me for the Better Together Facebook Live. If you're returning, so glad to have you. If you are new, thank you for checking us out. Go ahead and drop your name in the chat. And this Better Together Facebook Live is an interactive experience. We want you to be a part of the conversation. So throughout the evening, we're going to pop questions up on the screen so that you can join the conversation. So we're going to talk from 7:30 to 8. You're going to get a chance to be engaged and involved, and then you can share this broadcast with those who go where you go, they need to hear this information. And if you want to watch previous episodes of the Better Together Facebook Live, you can see all of the past episodes at barbruce.com on the blog page. So I do have something fun to share while everybody's getting in there. So make sure, drop in your name. And I think we've got an icebreaker question this week because we're talking about women in ministry. So if you volunteer or if you work at your church, go ahead and drop that in the chat when you share your name with us. And you can tell us where you're from if you want to. But let us know, do you volunteer at your church or do you work for your church? I worked on staff at my church for 14 years, and I've been a volunteer there for almost 25. And so women in ministry, women who serve, you are near and dear to my heart. So go ahead and let us know if you're out there. Now, I do want to share next Tuesday, 7 days from now, is the release of my new book. And thank you, Tabitha. My fabulous producer, Tabitha, popped up. You are invited to my party. Next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I am having a book release party because I have a new book. So this is my new devotional. It's titled Surrendered, 40 Days to Help You Let Go and Live Like Jesus. And this is the book for those of you, if you find yourself apologizing for being up in people's business because you're trying to fix things, you're trying to get people to do stuff, and then it blows up in your face, and then you have to apologize. I wrote this book for you. But seriously, this is a 40-day devotional. And this devotional is all about letting go of the things we can't control. And so there are topics like letting go of your adult children. Can I get an amen? Letting go of stuff, letting go of entitlement. And then topics like hoping like Jesus, praying like Jesus, loving like Jesus. This is, I wrote this so that it could be like a spiritual cup of coffee for you. You know, when you drink a cup of coffee and it perks you up and it gets you refocused? This is why I wrote the devotional. So you can check it out at cokesbury.com/surrendered. And this will release next Wednesday. And I hope that you come and join me at my party. I'll be giving away copies and doing reading, but that is something I'm excited about. So, now, wait, we've got some comments. We've got some ladies who chimed in. Tabitha, tell me who has joined us this evening. We've got some comments. So Catherine, hey, Catherine, thank you for joining us. She said that she said, my husband and I are Sunday school teachers for grades 1 and 3, and I also serve on our women's ministry. Catherine, thank you for serving. Catherine, Tabitha, who else? Oh, hi, Dorothy. Thanks for joining us. Dorothy, she's from Life Austin, Texas. I wonder if she knows who our guest is today. Oh, so I see our guest backstage right now. Dorothy, you should know that you have blessed her heart. So speaking of guests, let me go ahead, friends, and introduce my guest to you this evening. You'll see her picture in just a moment. And so, friends, I want to introduce my friend, Julie Lyles Carr, and here is some of her bio. Julie is a disciple, a reader, a writer, a runner, a photographer, wife to Michael, and mom to a bunch. And she is the founder of media and communications company Carr Consult. In addition to being a national speaker and best-selling author, Julie served as the executive director of Legacy of Hope Austin, which is a nonprofit serving families with children with special needs. Julie spent many years on staff as the pastor of Life Women at her home church, Life Austin in Texas, where Randy Phillips of Phillips, Craig and Dean served as lead pastor. Now, Julie's company, Carr Consult, provides writing content, marketing strategy, brand coaching, all of the things that make Julie amazing at her job. And she's also the host of the popular All Mom Does podcast. Thousands of downloads every month. She's welcomed guests like Beth Moore, Priscilla Shire, Bob Goff, Max Lucado, all of the amazing people. And then Julie's best-selling book, Raising an Original, it released back in September 2016. So she's about to have a book anniversary. And then her Bible study, which is how I know Julie, her Bible study Footnotes, that you'll see a picture on the screen, it was released in August of 2019. And Footnotes is a Bible study where Julie's going to tell us a little bit more about it, about some people in the Bible that you'd be interested in knowing about. Julie is also a ghostwriter. She wrote Jackie Velasquez, When God Reads Scripture Story. So as you can tell, Julie has a busy life, and she is the mother of 8. The mother of 8, friends. So please welcome to the Better Together Facebook Live, my good friend, Julie Lyles Carr. Let's see her. Julie, hello, Jordan.
Hello, it's Barb in the house. Anytime I get to hang out with you, girl, I'm down for it.
I love it, especially since I'm in Ohio and you're there in Austin. How are you doing today?
You know, actually, we got some rain here. And Barb, I know this is going to bless your heart. It's starting to feel like fall because it's only about 95 degrees.
You know what? That's amazing. It's starting to feel like fall. It's only 95. You know what? Bless that. Bless all of that. Well, you know what? Speaking of family, we're gonna play a game in a minute, but you had something huge happen in your family last week. Yeah, I mean, you got them 8 kids. I mean, that's the thing. But tell us the huge thing that happened.
Well, my husband, Mike, is also a speaker, and he has participated for years in an organization called Toastmasters. A lot of people may be familiar with this, and the mission of Toastmasters is really a beautiful one. It's to take people who perhaps are really nervous about communicating or speaking and help prepare them and give them tools for being able to present in front of an audience. And the longer you're in Toastmasters, some of the bigger goals and some of the things that begin to happen are these competitions. And so Mike, for several years, has competed in these competitions. And there's one that is the granddaddy of them all, the big one, the big game. And it is the international contest. And Mike this year won the whole thing. There were 30,000 some odd people who entered the competition. And at the end of it, he was named the world champion of public speaking. So, we're having to just be really delicate around him. Now he's a speaking diva. No, not really. But it's been really, really fascinating. And we've been so excited for him. And this is the first year that it's been a virtual competition because of COVID. And it just helps you appreciate even more the reach of this organization and Mike's ability to be able to speak in all kinds of different countries and cultures who participate through Toastmasters. So that was the big news this past week.
Has happened to all of a sudden my stream glitched there for a second. I'm not sure what that was about. Yes. Okay, we're back. Not sure what happened there,
Okay.
but I am so thrilled for Mike and for your family. And so we actually, I want the audience to know just a little bit more about your family. And Julie, this is so fun. You've got so many folks right now who love you, who are chimed in. But would you
Oh,
play a game with me real quick?
yeah, let's do it.
Oh, all right. So, audience, if you're listening, you're going to play along as well. This game is titled um, First to Your Mind. So, you are supposed to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. Now, audience, when I flash these words on the screen, you also can type into the comments the first thing that comes to your mind. And so there's a little bit of a delay between the time I ask Julie and the time that you see it. But I want you guys to join in anyway. So, Julie, are you ready? Do you understand what we're going to do?
I think so. I'm ready. I'm in.
All right. So, Julie, here we go. Tabitha, the first word. Julie, the first thing that comes to mind.
Episiotomy. Sorry. That's the first word that comes to my mind.
Oh, so quick fun story. So audience, Julie has 8 kids, and so we're gonna get into that. But my daughter she's a junior in nursing school. This week, she has been learning about labor and delivery, and she's like, "Mom, I have no idea why you kept having kids." So Catherine, the first thing that came to mind for her was ouch. And that's good.
That's fair.
Jody said the first thing that came to mind was tired. That's
100%.
beautiful. So Julie, so what is it this about the 8 kids that our audience should know?
Oh, it's so much fun. And people always want to know why 8. And some of you have heard me say this before, and Barb's heard me say this before, but Mike likes to say that spontaneity can cause people. And so it was not what we set out to do. People always ask that, Barb. They want to know, did you start out thinking you wanted 8 kids? Mike didn't think he wanted any kids. I was hoping to maybe get 1 or 2 out of him, but I was trying to balance if maybe I could get a puppy and a baby. I wasn't sure how he would feel on that split, but it's just been our unique journey and something that we felt very directed by God to do. And so, yeah, all the way to 8.
I love that. I was like, we want to get 1 or 2 and a puppy.
Yeah, that was that was my big goal. I thought if I could talk him into that. So anyway, all the way to 8.
Dorothy said never sleeps. That's awesome.
That's also correct.
So we've got one more, and audience, you're going to be in on this as well. So Julie, in a moment, you're going to see the next word and tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Here we go.
Okay. All right. Oh.
Audience, the first thing that comes to mind when you think of wedding. And Julie, what's first thing comes to mind, baby?
Can it be a phrase, or do I have to say one word? I want to clarify the rules.
You can do a phrase, and then we'll tell the audience why this is so funny.
Okay. Half marathon in the Amazon and then in the Arctic Circle.
Wow.
An endurance sport this past year, in the past 6 months, like I didn't know existed. I had no idea.
So
Renee Harper was there. Renee Harper has been at both of my kids' weddings and was my right-hand woman. And that is the correct word. Yes.
So really quick, Julie, tell the audience what happened during the pandemic in your family and weddings.
Yeah. So one of my kids, my son Justice, got married March 1st. And then my daughter McKenna got married August 1st. And y'all, I am telling you what, it was 2 different worlds. I mean, we had this wedding for Justice and his wife Lily that was all the family and all the things and all of the places that you think are so heavy in terms of trying to get everything planned and all the details. But I am telling you, you throw a pandemic into the next wedding, and we were having to do things, and Renee Harper can testify to this. We were having to do things with measuring tapes and masks and technology and uninviting people to a wedding. I mean, does Ann Landers have any information on how to do that? I mean, what is the Martha Stewart way to say, I'm sorry, thank you for RSVPing. You can't come now. I mean, it was just, So I thought Justice's wedding was a half marathon, but then I decided that McKenna's wedding was a half marathon in the Amazon, and then we moved into the Arctic. It was a level of endurance that was quite fascinating. Thank the Lord, Renee Harper was there as my running buddy for that one.
Love that. Oh my gosh. Well, Vicky Heath, hey, Jody Bree said yikes. So I think her first word to mind for wedding was yikes, especially after your
Yeah.
description. So, well, that oddly enough provides a transition to what you and I are going to talk about today, because weddings, especially unexpected moments and having to navigate conversations, that feels a whole lot like ministry.
Oh yeah. 100%.
And so today we're going to talk about what we need to keep in mind so that when we're in ministry, this idea of serving people in Jesus' name, that we don't lose our relationship with God. And you and I have had some conversations over the last few months. And so, audience, if you're listening, there's just some great wisdom that Julie has. And so there's going to be three things that we're going to talk about in the next few minutes. And what our hope and prayer for you is that you will have this moment where you will be able to recenter yourself and go, okay, God, where am I at? And where do you want me to be? And most of all, do I need the freedom to let go of some things that have been keeping me from enjoying my relationship with God? So, Julie, one of the first things that I want to talk with you about is this sentence that you've been saying. You were in ministry for a long time. Set that up for the audience just a little bit about your ministry years.
Right. So really for many, many years, I was involved in ministry and was doing some teaching, and in a more formalized way. I used to actually do a lot of praise and worship music. Some of my friends in my Austin group don't really know that, but back in my Oklahoma, and then when we lived down on the coast, I actually did a whole lot of music. And then I was also doing some teaching as well. When we came to the Austin area several years ago, we got involved in our church, and very quickly I was going to kind of sit on the back row and take a break because I'd been heavily involved in some ministry prior to that. And in that way that, people will find you and you get found and God will call you out, I ended up becoming heavily engaged in ministry in my home church here. And so I ended up serving as the women's pastor for over a decade and loved my time doing that, and have recently wrapped that up in that role in that way. And there was a whole process to it. And Barb, you were very much part of that conversation as I was grappling to try to deal with the complexities of loving the writing and speaking God was calling me to do, having loved the opportunity to have done that for my home church, and yet also trying to manage all the parts and pieces that come along with full-time ministry at the local church level. And Barb, you were hugely instrumental in helping me sort through a lot of that.
Well, for all of us, and there's a question that I want to put on the screen for the ladies. When it comes to ministry, how do you keep ministry separate from your relationship with God? Because Julie, the first thing that you talk about is this idea that God is not the job. And so, ladies, if you're listening, I want you to think about that right now. And Julie, go ahead and talk to us about what this first idea means of God is not the job.
Well, a few years ago, I don't know how many of you have felt this, but have you felt that restlessness in your soul? Like you're doing all the things, all the good things. You are volunteering and you are doing your Bible study and you are busy all the time with church. And I know in this age of COVID that has changed some, but I want to warn y'all, as things begin to lift, I think we're all going to have this urgency to get re-engaged in a similar way, even if God's been trying to tell us something through the process of making us step down and rest a little bit during COVID. So a few years ago, as I've shared with you before, Barb, I was doing some journaling about an upcoming year and prayerfully considering what I was supposed to be doing and how that was supposed to be going. And this phrase kept resonating. God is not the job. God is not the job, to the point that I began writing it in a lot of different places. And as my soul, as the Holy Spirit worked with me on unpacking that, what I began to realize was all of the activity that I was doing. And for everything that anybody could see in terms of seeing me on stage or seeing me engaged at my home church and all of the things, I was doing it from, I think, a really open place and a place where I really wanted to serve and love God well. but I was getting it super confused. I mean, it was to the place that when you don't have time anymore for your own personal devotions, when you are so frenetic that all the time there's not a moment for you to just sit and rest in his presence, even though you know the importance, even though you're encouraging people to do it, then you can be pretty assured that you are beginning to confuse God with the job. And I'm not even talking vocational ministry, Barb. I'm talking even in that volunteering place. Because the reality is the style of churches a lot of us are now involved in are very big organizations that require a lot of people coming along and helping. We've made church very complex, and I'm not saying that's wrong. There's so many amazing benefits to being part of churches that have these robust programs and things for your kids and outreaches to your community. That's beautiful. But we do have a tendency, I have a tendency to get to a place where I am far overcommitted. And as long as it has church or nonprofit or charitable organization attached to it, I can lose sight of how invasive and over the boundaries I can allow it to become because it's all doing such good.
Absolutely. And I believe that this is a great time in our lives for us to stop and think about where we're at, because many of our churches have had to stop and restructure. And so some of your churches may be meeting again. Some of them might be meeting in a limited way. And so if you're listening today and you felt like you were always on that ministry hamster wheel, this is a great time to go before church becomes active again. Are there things that were getting in the way of me having that space to just feel like it was me and God, not me, God, and a to-do list? And so, Julie, how did you start sorting that out for yourself?
You know, part of what has to happen, right, is you have to be really honest about your own proclivities and the places where you're challenged. And Barb, you and I on the Enneagram, we're both threes, which means we're performers. And I'm an Enneagram 3 with a 2 wing, which I think is kind of the worst combination, because if you're not familiar with the Enneagram, what that means is the 2 is the helper, the 3 is the performer. So I want to perform helping and really help people, but better than everybody. So it's just this terrible collision, right? That's exactly it. And so
Nailed it.
And so what begins to happen is there has to be this honesty about why am I doing and why do I feel so much pressure to do the things I'm doing? In my case, it's a collision of personality. It's a collision of that performer thing and that helper thing and that people pleasing thing. I'm an oldest child. I want people to be happy. And the people that I love, all these women that I'm serving, the congregation I'm serving, I truly want everybody to be happy. I'm the same way as a mom with my kids. I want people to be happy. I like to make people happy. I like to come in and help fix things and provide answers and all of the things. But as I began really unpacking the collision of my own personality into all of these serving opportunities, I had to start drilling down to what is actually my motive here.
Mm.
And motive is hard because motive can have aspects to it that our flesh is involved. Motive can have aspects that are very, very good and genuine. But at the end of the day, if my end all be all is not to please God, if I'm not making that the center of it and actually asking him what would please him, then I'm setting myself up for a soup that can get crazy, crazy real fast. And so often I think we skip the part of seeking God and saying, God, what can I do with my life that pleases you? The other thing that plays into this as well, Barb, is this. We forget that Solomon was so clear that there are seasons to life. And there may be seasons that you are called to be the full out volunteer for the kids' church situation on Sunday mornings at X amount of time. And God gives you the margin and the grace for that season, and you are to run it full out. And you may be tired and you may have to sacrifice some other things, but it's very clear that it's from him and it's for that season. But then it's also good to start assessing how to read seasons well. When we talk about being fruitful and productive, one thing that farmers and ranchers are so great at is they honor the seasons. They are good at taking a look at, is this the condition in which this particular herd is going to flourish or this particular crop is going to grow? And God so often uses metaphors about seasons and growth all throughout his word. Why would we anticipate, or why would we think that seasons don't apply to us? And so it is that place of looking at our personalities, looking at our motives, and taking a good hard look at seasons. Because sometimes I hear mamas with little bitty kids just bemoaning, I'm not as involved in this, that, or the other as I want to be. And I'm like, I don't mean it in a glib way. You're in a season, and there may be a season where you can be involved to that breadth. Or maybe somebody has been in a season where they've been hyper involved, and God's calling them to a season of saying, let's let it go fallow for a little bit, or let's change the field you're in. Let's change it a little bit. The willingness to be obedient to that actually can be very revealing about how your personality and your people pleasing is activated and what kind of motives you really have.
That is a whole word right there, a whole word. And in fact, Marie talked about Ecclesiastes for all seasons.
Yes, yes.
And so ladies, if you're thinking about this, and I love that Julie brought up that there is a time and a place. So I want you to think now about the things that you're involved in. And if you want to get a piece of paper, you can do this practical temperature check and write down the places in your life that you've got obligations to. And then assign a season. Summer being that it is fully flourishing, you're firing on all cylinders, you see God doing great things. Springtime, it's a relatively new thing. You're just getting started and figuring it out, and it's exciting. Fall is when you've been doing it for a while and it's comfortable, but it doesn't fire you up like it used to. In winter, you're just doing it because you don't want to let anybody down.
Yeah.
And so if you sit down with that list, and it's not Julie and I's place to tell you what to do with what season you've assigned to it, but I think that is a practical and tangible way for you to look at that seasons, because sometimes we lose ourselves in ministry because we don't realize when we're supposed to start and stop things. So Julie, honey, that one nugget, honey, you slammed it out of the ballpark on that one.
Thank you, love.
That was good. That was so good. And so ladies, if you've got thoughts, go ahead and chime in. Julie, and you were talking about people pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
As we are kind of getting towards the back end of the podcast, we do want to address that, because sometimes as women, we serve because of low self-esteem, because of guilt, because we think that'll make us a better Christian. And so can you paint a picture for us for the difference between passion and people pleasing?
You know, I've been wrestling this myself, because sometimes my passion has been people pleasing. True. Sometimes my passion has been my pride. I mean, it feels good to have so many people relying on you and need you and call you by a certain title and all the things. But I think that what I continue to learn is that passion is the thing that I just keep coming back to over and over, whether it's vocational for me, whether it really makes sense or is convenient. It just is so clear in the time that there's been kind of this nice pause, as you were talking about, since COVID, in a strange way, where things as we've known have been interrupted and changed up. And what I've learned, even though I knew it, but I needed to be reminded, was my passion is speaking and writing words that help propel people for change, for them to find their own passions, that entertain them, that make them think. That is my passion. And I have been doing that from long before I ever thought there might be a place for me in organized ministry. And I hope that that's the thing I continue doing forward. It's a thing that I am so excited about, to go and help a series of other nonprofits and ministries and commercial projects that I'm working on. It's so amazing to me to be able to do this and to continue to work on my own books and Bible studies and that kind of a thing. So for some of us, it's not that everything that God calls us to do has to be a passion. I think that that's one of the misnomers that we have going around in some ways. Well, I'm not passionate. As I've said before, my kids don't think they're gifted or called to clean the kitchen, but we all live in this house. So I don't care what your gift assessment or your spiritual gifts assessment says. We all got to clean the kitchen sometimes, and we all should be contributing to our church communities in that way. At the same time, I do believe that God wants us to leave room for our passions. And when our people pleasing gets in the way of really pursuing the things he has called us to, that again is where we have to go in and take that assessment. Is it my pride? Am I trying to make somebody happy? Am I trying to keep from disappointing somebody? Am I not willing to release a season? Or am I also in a place where the people pleasing is toward myself because I feel so important and I feel so of note when I stay in this role, when actually the thing I'm passionate about should be this thing that's healthier, should be this thing that leverages the gifts and the treasure he's given me to share with the world.
That's good. Well, and it's resonating with the ladies out there. Jody Bree said, Julie, master storyteller, love that. And then Dorothy says, she said, I started serving at church because I realized I was just showing up and not involving myself. Yes. And
Dorothy, love that.
It sounds like many of you were able to track and follow along with the passion that Julie shared. And so if you have not been connected with Julie, you can go to julielylescarr.com because there you can get connected with her in a variety of ways. Also, Julie hosts the All Mom Does podcast. And so if you love her story, her wisdom, and love hearing from great guests, please jump in there and get connected with Julie. And finally, Julie, you've got your Footnotes Bible study. So it's fall. Women are looking for Bible studies. And so give us the quick 411 on Footnotes.
I'll give you the fast one. Again, another message God's been pounding into my heart, that little things are big things. And so often we're inspired by those big stories in the Bible, the big characters that really show up and have the biggest, metaphorical Instagram following. But Footnotes highlights 4 people that you may have breezed right past. You may not really even remember their names or understand what was associated with their stories, but their stories still resonate today. They serve as these incredible examples to us in very unique ways. And so Footnotes unpacks 4 of those personalities who, even though they might not have the biggest profile when it comes to the Bible Facebook of life, they are so important to the totality of the story of grace. And so I'd encourage you to check it out.
Beautiful. Well, Julie, thank you for being with me on today's Better Together Facebook Live. Audience, thank you for jumping in with your comments, for sharing your heart, your experience, as well as just being engaged with us this evening. And so this is the end of today's Better Together Facebook Live. Again, this episode will be right here on my author Facebook page. If you want to watch previous episodes or see the show notes for this episode, you can go to barbruce.com on the blog page. We have one more question from Mel Jean. She said, how do you if you're even scared to start talking about passion? Julie, do you have right before we go, do you have a favorite book recommendation for a woman who needs to start the journey of her passion, finding her passion or finding her purpose?
There are a couple of things. This is going to sound strange and they're going to sound off topic. But one of the things that I think is really strangely helpful is a book about habits and habit forming. And I'm trying to get the name in my head right now, just off the top of my head. The Power of Habits, Charles Duhigg. Charles Duhigg. Yep. That's going to sound strange. But what happens is Charles Duhigg helps you unpack the things you're already doing that have become a habit for you. And what he wants you to do is help build habits based on those habits you already have. Well, what I discover is there are things that you may already have as part of your world that you don't even recognize are passions. Maybe it's that one of your habits is you always read for an hour and a half before bedtime. Well, that's a passion. Maybe it's that you spend quite a bit of time. It's a habit of yours to help tutor a kid who lives down the block from you. That's probably a passion of yours. Sometimes I think passion can feel like this thing that's like way out there and really big and esoteric. And yet, if we will get a little more granular and say, what are the things already right now that I've already built into my daily life and I crave more, the things I wish I had more time to do? When you begin to find those things, and even if you just said, I would watch Netflix all day long, you know what it tells me actually? You probably have a passion for stories. You might have a passion for cinematography, for photography, for the way that things are laid out. Those things, I think, are some of the breadcrumbs along the way. So Barb, thank you for the memory jog. It is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. I think when we just take a look at that and we look at the habits we already have in place, it tells us a lot about the things that we're already committing this powerful treasure of our days to in a way that is passionate.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. Also in the comments, ladies, I think there's some other book recommendations there. And so audience, if you've got other books with the power of habit, we've got Restless by Jenny Allen. For me, Kazone by Craig Rochelle. But if you've got other suggestions, drop them in the chat. Thank you for sticking around with us for some extra bonus minutes of the Better Together Facebook Live. We'll be back here next week at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a new episode with a new guest. So thanks again for joining us. Julie, thank you for being here. And everyone,
thanks so much.
I'll see you next week.